Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the conversation. I'm so glad you guys are here because we have a fun topic today. And by fun, I mean sometimes difficult because we are hoping that this conversation results in a little bit of change because we see some problems specifically in the area of the nutrition that our students are getting at our school. And I know it's not just our school because companies across the world are spending and making billions of dollars to market what equates to trash to our kids to eat. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree. So, yeah, I mean, Debbie, we're glad you're here. You have a great deal of experience in education in general, an insane amount of leadership ability. You have built Literacy First from the ground up. And Sarah, you've been with us for many years as a special education teacher. And you have seen specifically how nutritional deficits has led to increased behavior problems, potentially even students that wouldn't have needed special education services that end up needing special education services because of their nutrition. And so that's kind of the topic we're going to have. I mean, just a brief over the first part of this conversation, the problems that come from poor nutrition can result in lack of energy, can result in cognitive problems, can result in behavior escalation issues in a classroom, can result in health issues like diabetes, and just down and down and down that road. So starting with Sarah, what specifically have you seen in your experience as the result of poor nutrition with students that you work with?
Well, definitely, I think of it as fueling our bodies is really what nutrition is, how we're fueling our bodies.
Food is fuel, right?
Food is fuel. And you can't put cheap fuel in a high performance vehicle and expect it to perform the way it's meant to. And so our students are not reaching their capacity when they're poorly fueled.
Right.
And so it comes out as hangry, crabby, fatigued. So they're crashing and then burning. So their focus is off. Their impulse control is off. So you see that as maybe wild behavior or just not controlling what they say to people and how they say it to people. And they're just not connecting and thinking clearly. So that brain fog sets in too. And so they can't perform as a student.
Right. And I think we can all relate to that a little bit, right? I mean, we've all been hangry. That's a thing. And we all know that when we sometimes the things that are our favorite foods, whether we like cake or ice cream or whatever, we know we call that junk food. There's a reason why it's called junk food. But most adults understand that when you eat something that's super high sugar or super processed, that it feels good when you eat it, but about 30, 45 minutes later, you're a little frustrated, you get a crash, and possibly a headache, you need to sleep. I mean, that's kind of the way that this nutrition game works. Can you define really quick, what are you seeing specifically? What foods are coming to school that you would define as bad?
Yeah, so I kind of talk to my kids about my own children, about if it leaves a dye on your fingers. So if you open that bag of crunchy treats, so if it's Cheetos, Doritos, Takis, all the flavors of Takis, the blue dye, the red dye, the yellow dye, the orange, if it leaves something on your mouth or your fingers, it's no good. We cannot eat that. So all those kinds of chips, I see anything in plastic wrappers that can sit on a shelf for a long period of time. So the Ho-Hos, the Twinkies, the Hostess cupcakes, those types of things are so full of preservatives and just they're not real food.
So you mean the joke about Twinkies being able to survive the Armageddon and last for 100 years means that they're probably not healthy to eat?
Right. Your body doesn't know what to do with that. And it's not going to sustain you. It's not going to fill you up. So if a child's bringing that for their morning snack, what do you think the result of that is going to be? If you're hungry and you need more fuel for your body, you're not doing yourself a justice. You're still going to be hungry. You're going to spike in that blood sugar and then crash 40 minutes later.
Totally.
So,
Debbie, in your years, I mean, so she mentioned dyes, and I know that you and I have had that conversation about dyes. The dyes in a lot of the foods that are marketed heavily on commercials and all kinds of stuff, these red dyes and all the dyes they put in foods are really bad for us. What specifically in relation to dyes, what is your thoughts? And then also, just extending across your experience with kids over the many, many years, How have you seen then versus now, and what have you learned about nutrition?
Well, this issue of diet is not new. I mean, when I was in the classroom in the 70s, before you were around even, kids' diet, it was an issue back then. We didn't have maybe the big variety that we have now of all the junk food. The same Takis was not a thing back there, you know, all the flavored kind of things were not a thing back there. But food dyes were a thing. Sugar was still a thing. Salt was still a thing. And as a young teacher back then, I was kind of uninformed about all these issues until a parent came to me and said, you know, our kid has all these kind of things and we have him on this kind of diet. And it wasn't until then that I began to kind of look at this whole picture differently and realize that kids don't operate in a vacuum. Is that if their behavior is directly related to a couple of things, and diet is one of the big ones. You know, their diet is the big thing. The other thing that is directly related to is whatever's going on in their home. You know, and so when I noticed a kid's behavior change, that was the first thing that I'd ask is, what's changed in his life? You know, and I found oftentimes the issue, it was those two things always. But if it was something that I could do anything about, which was more diet than what was going on in their home, it came down to, what did you have for breakfast? You know, well, I had Captain Crunch cereal, or I had Apple Jacks, or some, you know, high sugar cereal, or I ate a Twinkie or a donut. Did you eat any protein?
Pop-Tart.
Yeah, all those sorts of things. And I found over time is that has not changed. Red food dyes have been a thing for decades, and just now we're beginning to get a handle on this idea that dyes in food are not good for kids. It's a chemical. It's fake, it's not a natural food product, and it changes kids' behaviors. Surprisingly, you know, in all the things that are going on in this state, you know, we just outlawed red food dye number 3. You know, this is only, you know, 50 years late, but that one red dye, you know, the red dye that was in Hawaiian Punch, that was kind of what gave Hawaiian Punch a big punch, because it had that red food dye in it, and so that's kind of what killed Hawaiian Punch for, you know, a long time. And so red food dyes are not a good thing. Any of those artificial colorings are not good for kids. In some sort of way, it impacts their behavior. Usually those red food dyes are also associated with high sugar or high salt. And so we put those things together. If a kid's, you know, if you do that once a week or something, that's one thing. But if that's their general diet, that's what they're bringing to school for their healthy snack. They didn't have protein for breakfast. You know, you've got kids that are doing this. It's like, you know, like you're saying, it's like a car that stops and starts all day long. Or, you know, has these emotional breakdowns because there's nothing in their body to sustain their little, I mean, they're emotionally, there's nothing there to sustain them.
That dysregulation.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of sustaining, you know, the ability for food to sustain a kid or a human over time, just over the day, I mean, as a psychologist, Sarah and I have worked with many students together, and specifically with a handful of kids, I've seen this happen more than once, to where we have a student who has a diagnosis of autism, which I would believe is, you know, the diagnosis are completely accurate. But I have watched us, you know, myself and Sarah and our other ed specialists work with parents to help them change the diet that these students have, and watched literally overnight the behavior problems and the ability of those students to succeed at school change like that. I mean, it's shocking. You know, we have a kid who comes to school, and he's, you know, a kid with autism comes to school, he's got Funyuns and whatever nonsense, all of these fake foods. The kind of, I think your definition of, if it can last on a shelf for a month, it's probably not good for you. You know what I mean? So like all of those foods, anything in a bag that you open up, and so coming to school with those kind of things, and we work with the parents and say, okay, hey, send him to school with an apple. Send him to school with some vegetables with some hummus dips. Send him to school with, you know, some basic, you know, other easy things that are still cheap. I've watched kids' entire lives change. All of a sudden they can sustain a day of school. And then they go home, and then they have a healthier dinner, and they sleep better. And then they show up the next day feeling better because they slept better, and they eat a better breakfast. I mean, it's just this snowball effect that affects every aspect of their life. I mean, and there's all of these other pieces of this web, you know, social media use, nutrition, exercise. I mean, there's all these pieces that are kind of tied together. Nutrition is core to the ability to have healthy kids. And I have seen it with my own 2 eyes change kids' lives. I've also seen kids who get referred for testing for special education for a learning disability. that by changing their diet, they no longer meet diagnostic criterion for a learning disability because they ate healthy. So
Or slept.
I've literally seen
Yeah.
children behave like they had a learning disability and not learn in school because they were eating bad food. And then all of a sudden you hand them healthy food and they learn.
Yeah.
And they no longer have a learning disability.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for parents. A lot of parents don't have, don't have their own information. They don't have their own understanding of what healthy
Right.
food is.
Right.
And so, you're starting kind of at a ground level, just starting, with that thing about let them eat the rainbow. Trying to give them
Yeah,
things.
right.
So you need to eat food that are in colors, not in bags. That sort of thing. But for a lot of parents, the idea is, well, food, it's really expensive, or I don't have the ability to do that. But as we found out, that's not necessarily the case.
Totally. So before we step on to the next step, which is what does good eating look like? Let's really quickly define, throw out some foods that are bad foods. Let's accurately define these foods that are probably bad foods to send for lunch and snack for a student. What should they not eat? Or what are the components of bad food? Let's talk sugar levels, processed, stuff like that. So Sarah, what are the bad foods that we should stay away from?
Well, I think corn syrup, anything with high fructose corn syrup
Okay.
it's going to be one of the first 2 ingredients on the food label. So let's stop doing that.
Okay.
That's easy to go into a store because oftentimes the bad choice is next to the better choice.
Right.
Right there, and they're relatively similar in price. So you're not having to shovel out more money for the better choice.
Right.
So even though cane sugar is still sugar, it's a better choice to swap out.
Then fructose. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
dyes, no
Okay.
good.
Yep.
Preservatives. So when you look at an ingredient label and you see all these long words, those are preservatives. If you don't know what it is,
Yep.
not a good choice.
Yep.
If the ingredient label for like a cracker or a chip is this long,
Yeah.
not a good choice. So let's look next to that. Let's look down the aisle at our better choices and vote with our dollars, right?
Right.
So,
Awesome. Debbie, what are some foods that you would stay away from? So just functionally define bad food.
I mean, these are hard things, but I think a lot of times our kids bring those Lunchable things to school, and they're just pretty much full of
Preservatives.
all those things,
Junk.
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
that we just talked about.
Yeah,
Is
but
it full of
they have cheese dip, but
Right.
you don't realize, you look at the ingredients in
Yeah.
the cheese dip, it has a lot of things,
Right.
many of which are not milk
Not-
or dairy
not-
or
it's
cheese.
not real
not
milk
cheese.
products, not real cheese,
Yeah.
not real milk products. I mean, you can do the same thing if you just go and buy your own set of pepperoni and your
Yeah.
own set of little crackers and
Yeah.
make your own little
Make your
own
own.
little Lunchable things rather than buying the prepackaged things. It's
And-
probably less expensive.
It's less expensive
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
build your own. It's going to be hard either way. It's either going to be hard to make those choices or hard to spend the time.
Right.
So choose your hard,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
And the healthy,
Right, and here's how we'll talk about this later, but here's the really cool part about making your kids food the night before is that, we've talked about social media being a terrible thing and that sucks up everybody's time, but how about instead of being on social media or watching TV, you have, everybody gets to make their lunch the night before. You're spending time as a family, you're eating healthy, you're getting kids away from other screens and stuff that's unhealthy. So,
I mean, it's not hard to go
no.
have those baby carrots.
Right.
You buy a thing of celery, you chop it all up, you put it in a thing. I mean, you can have these things all prepackaged, ready to go, so that you're just kind of putting these things together. Hummus goes into a little thing, or little cottage cheese, or little yogurts, or whatever it is. If you're buying, yogurt's one of those things I think you kind of have to be careful of too, because it's can be full of all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
sugar and all the other things. So you kind of have to look at yogurt and make sure that you're getting a good yogurt.
typically you want to stay with Greek yogurt that doesn't have any added flavor.
Yeah.
You just kind of like, it's a little bit bitter, but you can throw
Yeah.
in your own strawberry.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So we've kind of defined bad food, right? And we'll talk a little bit later about how to read a label. But now let's talk about good food. What does it look like? What happens when students eat healthy? We've talked a little bit about it, but what happens when students eat healthy? Debbie.
Well, energy level is going to change. Attitude's going to change. Generally, behavior's going to change. I mean, you combine good food with good sleep, and you have a different kid.
Yeah.
And if they're eating good food, and if they're drinking enough water, all those things, they're going to sleep well. And it just shifts it shifts the entire life for a kid.
Right.
I've worked with kids where they're like, oh, he doesn't like to eat in the morning, so he does, so we wonder why he's, crashing and burning and acting like a crazy kid about 11 o'clock. because he didn't eat breakfast, and then he brought some kind of junky thing for snack.
Right.
And then lunch comes, and the kid's wild. And at that point, a lot of times it's hard to get a student to sit down, or kid to eat, because they are wired up. So
Right.
you're having to say, okay, we've got to settle down here just so we can get. I mean, seriously, at that point, it's like an intervention.
Yeah.
Because you know that the behavior's not going to change until you get some kind of protein in there to
Right.
be able to let him regulate.
Yes.
Word of this word that I use a lot at school and on these videos is extinction burst, right? When we go to change a behavior or help our kids go from an unhealthy habit to a healthy habit, they're probably going to be a little mad at us, frustrated, and their behavior will get bad for a minute.
Yeah.
And then you hold the line, don't change, and they'll get mad again, but then they'll recognize, oh, okay, this is just the way it is. Then they'll chill out, and they can get them good food.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, their ability to manage throughout the day gets better. They get healthier. I mean, I just glanced over my notes again, and the research shows that the poor diet that we just talked about increases dental health issues, increases digestive problems. They can't digest the food they have, gives them a weaker immune system, makes them sicker, lowers their cognitive function. So literally makes them dumber. Excuse my word, but
Or a limited capacity.
but
Yeah.
makes them less smart. That's an official phrase that I'm making up. I'm a psychologist, less smart. Increased nutrition deficits. And so that's like, you need these vitamins. You don't have the vitamins you need because this food doesn't have no vitamins. Risk of diseases later on in life, emotional behavior impacts. So kids are more depressed. They're more likely to be suicidal. There's a higher rate of diabetes. I mean, the number of scientifically proven results of poor nutrition just go on and on and on.
Well, I mean, that phrase, you are what you eat,
Yeah.
is very true.
Yeah.
And kids are really transparent with that. I mean, adults can kind of learn to regulate themselves, but
Yeah.
then you're looking at the whole physical thing. I mean, you are what you eat. And for kids, it is very much, you can tell the behavior and their emotional state of being, all of that, based on what kind of diet they've eaten. Talking with parents, it's like, well, they don't like to eat food, they just want to drink milk. And that's a whole nother thing, because you think milk is good, but too much of it is too much of it.
Too much is
You
too
can't
much,
just be drinking 32 ounces of milk a day.
A lot of arguments about dairy products.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Allergies, all the things that come with that whole
Yeah.
thing. So there's a lot that goes into just saying, okay, we just need to be reasonable
Cool.
about eating some colorful foods.
Okay, what is healthy food? Debbie Beyer, go.
Vegetables would be healthy food.
All right.
Raw vegetables would be healthy food.
Okay.
Protein, nut butters would be a healthy
Okay.
food.
Almond
You know.
butter, peanut
Yeah,
butter.
Yeah, all those sorts of things. Whole grain products,
Okay.
crackers, breads, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real cheeses. Those are
Awesome.
healthy things.
Yeah. High in protein.
High protein.
There's such a thing as healthy fat. I think it's
Yes.
probably one of the most destructive lies
Yeah.
that has been told across our nation,
Yeah.
right? Is that fat is bad for you.
It's not. It's very
You're
good
in
for you.
healthy fats.
Yeah,
Sarah.
and that was something that came about in the 90s because I remember like even my own parents were like, "Oh, we'll get on this low fat bandwagon." But what they were doing was marketing inflammatory oils.
Right.
So replacing real whole butter, which is so good for you when you're cooking in moderation.
Yep.
With this like hydrogenated oil,
Yeah.
and it's inflammatory and it's not whole food. So we're
Right.
looking at whole foods.
Right.
So
Can I stop
adding
you really quick? Can you
yeah.
define inflammatory?
So like,
If a food is inflammatory, what is it doing to your body?
yeah, it's just tearing up your gut, which is
Okay.
more than just your stomach and your intestine. It's just like the absorption of your body
Okay.
and where it's going and how it's being processed in your body. It's just causing puffiness,
Yep.
poor digestion.
Yep.
And so
Often make your body just feel like it's in more pain.
in more pain,
Yeah.
joint pain,
Yep.
it just does a lot of bad things for you. So
Okay, back to yours. Yeah.
whole foods, but specifically whole fat. So I like how you mentioned cottage cheese.
Yeah.
So make sure when you have a carb, like a cracker, that you're pairing it with a protein and a healthy fat. So
Great.
if you're giving celery sticks or just a vegetable tray, right? A whole fat, full fat dip.
Got it.
So instead of buying the ranch dressing,
Yeah.
just get a tub of full fat, clean sour cream and put the ranch dressing dip in there.
There you go.
And then that's gonna burn slower in your body instead of spike, crash,
Right.
spike, crash. And
So-
it's gonna feel full longer.
Right. So the benefit of healthy fat. So if we're talking about energy, you say that food is energy for your body, right?
Yep.
And so sugar is in a lot of things because sugar's super cheap.
Yep.
Companies can buy sugar for nothing.
Yep.
It's also super addictive. We
Yes.
talk about dopamine a lot, and dopamine is something you get from a cheap food with a bunch of sugar. And your brain looks for the shortest place between here and good, feeling good, pleasure,
Yep.
right? And eating sugar gives you pleasure. It's really easy to get. Companies can buy it for super cheap, and then they can charge you money. But it's super unhealthy.
But then you like their product and you're gonna buy it
You're
again.
addicted to their product.
Yeah.
They're putting you in prison again. We talked about that in
Yeah.
some other episodes as well, right? We talked about social media has put you in prison. Sugar kind of does the same thing. But sugar burns really fast, or it turns into fat on your body, and it makes you actually gain weight and stuff like that. Healthy fats that you eat, they burn slow. So if you think about it, if you eat something with a healthy fat, you eat a bowl of yogurt with some whole grain oats in it or something like that
Yeah.
for breakfast, and it's healthy fat, you'll have energy that will last you
Longer.
slowly throughout until lunch. If for breakfast you're having Captain Crunch and you throw some sugar in it and have your coconut milk, or not coconut milk, sorry, chocolate milk poured into your Captain Crunch, you're just spiking your sugar.
Yeah.
You're going to be wired until 9 a.m. and then crashing from 9 a.m. to noon.
And
And
you
that's what
don't-
we see with our kids a lot.
You don't feel good.
Right. So the idea that we need to make sure that we are having healthy fats is super important. This is a slow burning energy that lasts. Similar to protein. Proteins are similar. Your brain needs protein to function. Your body needs protein to function. So let's talk about proteins a little bit.
Could I give 2 examples of how I
Please.
feed my kids? So I have
Yeah.
a 13-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old,
Okay.
right? My 13-year-old is the pickiest of them all. So at our house, peanut butter and jelly reigns supreme.
Awesome.
Everyone loves that. So I have my whole grain bread, and I just put butter or coconut oil on there. And then I do the peanut butter and the jelly,
Okay.
which I pick my jelly carefully, or my
Right.
jam. We actually get to use homemade jam. But just something without corn syrup in it, low sugar. And then that has everything in it. It's balanced. It's got your protein, your healthy fat, low sugar, good to go. It's gonna fill them and sustain them.
Got it.
My son does not love to eat breakfast, but he's a kid whose profile, his learning profile, he needs to have breakfast, but he won't do it. But he loves sourdough toast, and it's fast because I'm a working mom. We've got to be out the door by 6:45 in the morning.
Right.
And so something that's easy that he can take ownership of, he needs to toast his own bread and then put generous amount of real butter on there.
That's
and
awesome.
he's eating in the car.
Butter is a great place
Yeah.
for healthy fats.
Easy.
Like a good butter, right?
Yeah, so we've got the carb with a fat.
Awesome.
And then it's gonna sustain longer, but
Yep.
he needs something in the morning.
Right.
And as a mom, I'm not gonna pick that battle. That's just what's available at our house. And I give him a forced choice. So if he's complaining and we're going out the door, I just say, would you rather have part of my smoothie or toast? You have 1 minute. And I walk away. And you've got to have something,
Yep.
make a choice. And so even if he might huff and puff about it, he makes a choice.
Right.
Yep.
Which is another theme that we talk about often around here, and it's that the parents are parents of their kids.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've established
You're
that.
the boss.
If you said
Right.
that's a choice, I
Yeah.
mean, you've got 2 choices, may not be preferred, but pick
Pick
one
one.
because
This has
none
got to
is not an
happen.
option.
The
Yeah,
bus
yeah.
is leaving.
You're right, and you're
Get
not
that
in the
done.
bus if you're not
Right.
going, yeah.
And it's like, you'll thank me later.
Yeah,
You may not
exactly.
realize you'll thank
Right.
me later, but you
You
will.
will. That's
You will.
so true, yeah.
Because you'll feel better.
But
So-
parents can have that sort of authority in their home.
We must.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
We are the parent,
Yeah.
and this is our responsibility.
Exactly.
And going back, you were saying earlier about we can regulate ourselves. I'm thinking we have the autonomy because we're adults. But in a school setting or a day, kids are dependent on us. And they have to abide by our setting. They can't just say, I need to get up and move now. At our school, they can. Can I get up and move? But they also can't say, like, I'm hungry and I need to eat right now. Because in a classroom, really, that's not totally an option.
They also don't
So-
know that's what they're
They don't know
feeling.
they're hungry.
Yeah, don't often know that. Just like, I'm in a bad mood. It's like, well, it's good
Yeah.
you're hungry.
But we
Yeah.
we have gotten to the point where we realize if a child's behavior is weird, it's like, did you eat breakfast this morning?
It's usually the first
No,
question.
come on, let's
Yeah.
go get you some, we
Something.
keep some stuff in the office.
Yeah.
And so if we know a kid's, no, I didn't eat breakfast. Well, let's go get you something
Yeah.
because that makes a shift in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so we've identified that poor eating, poor health results in all kinds of bad stuff. Good eating, good health, and we've defined some of the good foods that you can eat and that they lead to all kinds of success and higher functioning. How can families get from here to there?
Yeah.
Because many families are surviving. You're working 2 jobs. They're just trying to survive. I mean, it's hard to live here in general. And so how can families get from, oh man, like it seems like this is all I have time for, and it seems to be these bad foods, to we got to get to this place where my kid's eating healthy. How do you get from there to there to do good eating, Sarah?
Yeah, so as a working mom, like I just have to choose where I invest my time and my energy because we're going, as moms, we're going, as parents, we're going 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So what I've done in just making small little swaps, I just put it in my mind as I'll make one better swap. I'll just start with one, and then I have success with that. So for example, goldfish crackers instead of chips. So that's one good swap. Well, goldfish crackers come in lots of flavors, right? But we at our house choose the whole grain ones, not the colorful ones, not anything with extra stuff added to
Dyes.
it. Dyes.
Yeah.
And then maybe from goldfish crackers, we go to Costco and we look at some of the more whole grain cracker options. So just making like a chain, just from here to here. And then after we get comfortable, from here to here.
Okay. So
Not
you're-
trying to overhaul your pantry because that's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming it would be overwhelming for me to look at my pantry
It's
and say, what do I got to
overwhelming.
do? I got to throw away $1,000 of food that
And we can't.
randomly been sitting here forever,
Yeah.
or $500, or
And we
anything.
can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
So you just make the next best choice. And something that's been helpful for me is I found this gal on social media. Her name's Carlin, and her whole thing is good, better, best.
Awesome.
And so she just has these easy visuals she makes where she takes pictures of things in the pantry on the grocery store shelf, and she'll do like thumbs down on these kids' snacks. And then the next slide is like better choice here.
Awesome.
And she'll just take you shopping with her at Costco or Walmart, and she'll show you, here's a poor choice. Here's why it has corn syrup and all these oils in it, and the nutritional value is junk. They're marketing it to you. But right next to it on the same shelf is this better choice. Here's why. It's using cane sugar instead, or minimal. How many grams of sugar are in this? And just having that in my feed, I've chosen for this to be an influence
So
in my
you're
life.
What was
saying,
her name?
so you're
Again,
saying that
say
social
that.
media is not all the devil. That
You have
can get
to
some good stuff,
select
which is great.
and narrow down your focus. But her
So what is her tag? What's
her
this
tag
social
is
media account?
just ingredients.
Okay.
Just ingredients.
Okay.
And she just does it with food and other
That's
products
awesome.
too. But I've chosen for her to be a daily influence in my life because she does the research for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, great idea. I'm going to Costco. Let me write that on my list. And it just has made all the difference for me.
That's great.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So what are some ideas, Debbie, that you have from getting from, we've got a fridge full of junk food and a pantry full of junk food to we need to overhaul? I mean, I think one of Sarah's best things is that you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Just do one thing at a time.
And
So what are your
I
thoughts?
think the other thing is you kind of look at what people who you admire or you think have got it figured out, watch what they're doing. And I think, as moms, that's what we do a lot is kind of look around and go, okay, what kind of tennis shoes are their kids wearing? Why aren't the kids wearing those tennis shoes? What's with those plastic shoes? Kind of looking at that and going, what kind of snack? What's that snack? And just, being observant of other people and looking at what other parents are doing and going, okay, maybe I don't send that thing. Maybe I don't send that thing. I think the other part of that is, listening and kind of seeking out. You can just Google finding good snacks. I mean, and you're going to get a whole list of a whole bunch of people that give all these, and I think we've got some of those.
Chat GBT, which everyone has access to, says fruits and vegetables are healthy, whole grains, protein sources including meats, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, tofu, nuts. I would stay away from tofu personally, but hey, dairy, certain dairy things, and like alternatives of dairy milks, like the almond milks and the coconut milks and stuff like that. Those are also decently good. Watch out for sugar,
Right.
because often in the alternatives to milk, to make you want to drink them, they'll add a bunch of sugar. So pay attention to that. Healthy fats, limited added sugars.
Yep.
Make sure you're hydrated. That is a massive part. We haven't even talked about hydration.
Water.
Drinking water is so important.
And see, that's a thing that wasn't even a thing when I was a mom.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about water. I mean, water was not even a thing. And I look back on it, I'm thinking, I don't know, how do my kids survive? We never even talk about water. I mean, that wasn't even a thing, but water has become a very big thing, and you can just tell. I mean, like I said, there are certain things when you realize this kid is, diving, and it's like, okay, they're just get them some water, get them some protein, and I mean, it's almost instantaneous. It's like when you water a plant, and you can sit there and watch it, and all of a sudden it's like
Revive.
the leaves all of a sudden pop up. I mean, little kids are like that.
Yep.
I mean, they're that quickly respond, and so it's. I think if parents realize you don't have to just overhaul the whole thing. You don't have to, it's overwhelming.
It is.
When you start thinking of how am I supposed to feed my kids when I go to the grocery store and there's a jillion options,
Yeah.
and what my budget allows or doesn't allow, we buy what we're comfortable with and not realizing maybe it might have been an okay thing to eat when you were a kid, but
Right.
now it's full of,
All the stuff.
high corn sugar, fructose. It's
right.
full of all these fats. It has shifted. The ingredients have shifted. So
Yeah.
it's not the same thing it was as when I was a kid. So I think just being observant, and really, if when you go to the grocery store, it may take a little bit longer, but just say, okay, this time I go to the grocery store, I've got a little extra time. I'm going to just start. Instead of just going and grabbing what I know, I'm going to look at what's next to it and see and try to do some comparison. Because if you're looking for healthy things, if you're just looking, okay, I just really need more protein and less sugar. I don't have to figure out all the other things,
Right.
but if I'm just needing more protein, less sugar, start with those things.
Yeah.
When you begin to see your kids' behavior be different.
Yeah.
And also, I think you're going to expect that extinction burst you talked about, because
Kids
the
are gonna
kids
be a little
used
frustrated.
they're used to eating Funyuns and all the junk, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
you come home with all this weird stuff, and like, oh my gosh, I got to eat all these things, or a whole lot of fresh vegetables. I don't eat carrots. I don't like peppers, or those little peppers. Hummus. I'm not a hummus person.
Yeah.
That will so you just don't bring all the weird stuff home.
Right.
Just start with a
Right.
few things and get them used to that.
Yeah. One of the things that my wife has done is you take goofy looking fruits and vegetables that kids don't necessarily love and cut them in fun shapes. Take a cucumber, cut it in a star. Take a bell pepper and cut it into little straws, and you can dip it in.
Yeah.
Dip it in the Greek yogurt or high fat sour cream with
The other
some other
thing
stuff,
with that, because we do have lots of our parents that their normal diet is a lot of vegetables, but to send that to school requires you to put it in something that kind of keeps it cool or not melty. And so that's a hard thing for parents, because you can grab a bag of something and just stick it in a backpack and not have to worry about keeping it cool or keeping it from getting smushed or whatever. And
that's easy to solve. You can get a Ziploc bag. We do this. Ziploc bag, put 5 ice cubes in it, throw it in the lunchbox. It's going to stay cool. You just put you put the little you put that at the bottom, and then you just put everything on top
it just
of it.
takes
It's going to
a
stay
little
cool.
bit more thinking.
Yeah. But it's solvable, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. One of the resources that I've recently been told about is a website and a social media account called Kids Eat in Color. And she's a lady that does a lot of similar things to the one that you were talking about. And one of the things on her website is that she has a whole menu that is built off of EBT. So that if one was to think that I can't afford this stuff, healthy food's too expensive. The truth is, it kind of isn't. You can go to Walmart and buy healthy food. You can go to the 99-cent store and even find some vegetables. I don't know if they're the greatest, but you can find them. This whole account, she has a whole section based off of EBT, where you can build healthy meals, healthy snacks with just EBT. And be able to
And
provide
the truth
healthy
is,
food.
every kid in California, if you've eaten at school lunch,
Yep.
just got an EBT card. Whether you
Yeah.
ever got an EBT card before in your whole life,
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
everybody's got these weird little EBT cards floating around. So,
Right.
you might as well be buying some good food with it.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
we've got hundreds of parents at our school that are like, why am I getting this card?
Yeah.
We don't do this. But the state of California is trying to get rid of COVID money, and so they've sent out these cards all around, and nobody knows what to do with them.
Yeah.
Buy
Well,
some
let's
healthy
make a grocery
food.
list.
Yeah, buy some healthy food.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go shopping for some
Yeah.
snacks.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as we close out, I would like to hear your top 3 healthy choices for snacks and 2 healthy choices for lunches that you could send your kid to school with. Sarah, top 3 healthy snacks.
I actually brought my son's snacks with me.
Can we see them?
Yeah, so to start with, in my pantry, I just have baskets, and so I classify things. And I'm like, you can pick something from each basket. And so I have my crunchy options, we have our bars, and then we have like our nuts, and then I have my fruit on the counter or whatever. And then in our drawers, what I do is I freeze our cheese sticks, so you just grab one and then it stays cold, so it doesn't
idea.
get warm, right? So you grab a frozen cheese stick and stick it in your lunch. So these are just some of the choices at our house for some of the swaps. Are they perfect? Maybe not, but I try to just do as whole food as I can. So this was applesauce. I always get the no sugar added. Applesauce is sweet enough. It contains its own sugar. Why are we adding sugar? That's ridiculous.
100%.
Do the squeezies have sugar in them?
Some of them.
You have to read the label.
Okay.
Yep.
So fruit, we boil eggs and then we mark it with a B with pencil so we know they're boiled. So that's a protein. Goldfish crackers, whole grain,
Okay.
or pretzel sticks if he wants a salty, crunchy thing. My kids love almonds, but we have cashews and other nuts as well. It's so funny. My 3-year-old's like, I want a cashew. This is a macadamia nut. Like, it's so funny.
My daughter's super allergic to those nuts. So with nuts specifically,
You have to be careful.
Be careful with your own kids. There's a lot more allergies going around in 2020, whatever it is now,
Sure.
versus 1980 and 1970. So I mean, just
Yeah.
pay attention to your own kids' allergies. You
Yeah.
probably know them.
And be thoughtful.
Yeah.
If you know there's a peanut allergy in your classroom, you won't be sending that. But our kids eat outdoors.
Yeah,
so
no, it's
it
fine.
shouldn't
I
be an
just wanted to
issue,
throw that
but
out there.
Yeah, that's something
What's
wise.
that?
So like Nutri-Grain bars
All right.
have high fructose corn syrup. But at Trader Joe's, does this have sugar? Yes, this has 17 grams of sugar, which is almost a whole day's worth of sugar,
Right.
technically. In the American diet, compared to everything else, not so bad. But this is a better alternative to the Nutri-Grain bar. I got this at Trader Joe's. A box is like $2 for 6. This is 2 grams of sugar. This is a protein bar. It says cookie dough. I get
So
these
that's
at
a Costco.
Costco. This is like keto diet, so protein. We've got a cheese stick,
Great.
which we freeze at our house, and then just vegetables.
And fruit.
Cut them up.
Yeah, fruit and vegetable. There you go.
So this would be something my 3-year-old would eat. I would have to pack twice as much for my 13-year-old, but he would eat it.
He would eat it.
What I would also do with these is I have a little container to put inside with the dip,
Okay.
because he'll
it
scrounge
with
that
the dip.
down. If I gave him this by itself, it's gonna come back home. But add a dip, he's gonna eat it. So these are just some options we have at our house. What I tell my son is pick 4, plus your leftover or your sandwich. And then the only beverage we have at our house is milk and water.
Yep.
That's all.
Yeah.
We don't buy juice. We don't buy Gatorades and stuff. I'm the worst baseball mom when it's my turn for snack. And I'm almost embarrassed, but I'm like, I'm not giving you Gatorade. I'm not. I'm going to be that mom. You're going to hate me that day, but guess what? I don't feel good about myself giving you this out of baseball games. So something we like at our house are trace mineral packets from Amazon. The brand is Trace Minerals. Like Emergency will give you
Okay.
your vitamins and stuff, but it also packs a ton of sugar in there.
Yeah.
So a better choice for us is Trace Minerals packets. They come in like 10 different flavors, and we actually have to restrict our son on how many he's allowed to take
Okay.
because he loves them. But
And that's a good multi kind of deal.
absolutely,
Okay.
you can even look at all those nutritional things in there. And if you're not eating whole foods like this, you're deficient in your minerals.
Right.
You're deficient in your vitamins.
Yep.
So vitamins and minerals need to come from your food first, and then we can supplement with vitamins. But if you're having to give your kid a ton of vitamins, that's a great indicator. Maybe we need to pause and think about this.
Right.
What am I putting into my kid? What am I
Right.
putting into my diet as a
Right,
parent?
right.
Because we model and we provide for our families, so let's start with us too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
the conversation that I have with parents, is like, if we're having a student that has some really unbelievable like behaviors, I know that this diet thing is not going to fix this immediately. It's, we always say, we need to look at, is your child on any sort of vitamin? I mean, are they taking any omega-3 fish oils? Is there a B vitamin in there? Is there somewhere where they're getting enough zinc, or, you know, all those sorts of things? And that's a scary thing for a lot of parents, because it's like science, you know, but you like, you know, you need to make sure that there are some basic things your child's not getting if they're not eating these sorts of foods.
Yeah.
And that again, will, I mean, you just start with an omega-3 and a B, that will change a kid's behavior.
B complex,
Yeah, a whole
yeah.
B
Yeah,
complex.
so B complex
Yeah.
meaning, so I mean, a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is pretty complicated. I mean,
Yeah.
a B complex meaning multiple B. There's
Right.
B6, there's
Yeah,
B12,
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
riboflavin, so.
Yeah.
But that's all regulating your nervous system. I mean, it's all
Right.
settling them down. Yeah.
So, I mean, so I printed out another list, and all these things are on it. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin E, K, vitamin B complex, which is B1, 2, 3, 5, 6,
12.
12, 9. You know, folate is also a B9, and then there's riboflavin. I mean, there's all of these things: calcium, iron, zinc, magnesium. Most of those vitamins will come from a balanced diet.
Yep.
However, having a multivitamin as a part of a kid's diet isn't necessarely bad, because your body will get rid of most vitamins if you have
Right.
too much.
If you don't need it.
So one thing I would say to be careful with vitamins is sugar. Most kid multivitamins have a ton of sugar to get kids to eat them. So look for low sugar multivitamins, and you know, if you can find one that's like organic or healthy, but start there. I feel like that's a good place to start. Then move to, let's replace a snack. One thing at a time. Then let's move to, let's start changing the way we do lunch. Anything else you would add? Because when we just went through a whole thing, anything else you would add? What's another healthy snack lunch idea?
Well, I mean, I think
quickly.
the idea of lunches is just realizing that a lunch can be a bunch of these things right here. Nuts could be a big part of a lunch. Cheese is going to be a big part of a lunch. It doesn't have to be some, you know, a packed deal. You know, kids are okay with little bits and pieces of things.
They like to graze.
Yeah. So if you give them a lot of bits and pieces of things, you know, we work really hard with our school lunch provider, you know, trying to get healthy lunches. That's a hard thing, you know, when you're buying government cheese. It's just a hard thing to figure out. Our food provider is working really hard with us to make sure that we get some healthier things. And we're seeing, I mean, they are working to do that, you know, because we're encouraging them to do that. But you can't just think that if your kid is eating lunch at school, that's going to be necessarily a healthy lunch. It's going to get them all those things they need in their diet. So it's important that the snack is healthy. And if that's not happening, they also need to be having some sort of vitamin thing, because your child's behavior will change significantly, and their opportunities will change because their behaviors changed.
Because they succeed in classrooms, and then
exactly.
all of a sudden they're learning more, and all
Right,
you know, blah blah blah. I mean, I would say that, you know, we do the best we can absolutely do with our school lunches. However, a school lunch will never be a parent that sends their kid to school with a well thought out healthy lunch. Never. And full disclosure, I send my daughter to school with lunch. She has some allergies, but we send her to school with lunch every single day, and it looks very similar to this. And I work at the school, and I would suggest, please go through the effort to send your kid to school with a healthy lunch and a healthy snack. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
I think we've covered so much.
Covered a lot.
We are what we eat, and it's important what we
Yeah.
let our kids eat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and hope it helps lots of people.
Me too.